You close your eyes, and the world disappears, and in its place there is only the sound of your own breath, shallow and uneven, like the rasping of wind through a broken fence. The air around you is thick, not with warmth, but with the weight of something unsaid, something that has been waiting in the corners of memory for decades to be acknowledged. You are not here, not in the safety of your chair, your room, your century. You are somewhere else, somewhere colder, somewhere where the earth itself seems to have forgotten the meaning of mercy. The snow falls in silence, each flake a small white lie that covers the truth beneath, and you watch it accumulate on your hands, on your coat, on the rifle you no longer remember how to hold. The forest around you is not a forest, but a congregation of shadows, tall and still, their branches bare and reaching upward like the skeletal fingers of the dead, pleading with a sky that offers nothing in return. The wind is a serrated blade, cutting through the wool and leather and skin until it finds the bone, and even then it does not stop. It carves deeper into the marrow, where the cold becomes a part of you, undistinguishable from your own blood. This is December 1943. Though the date means nothing to you now, it is just another mark on a calendar that no longer exists, another number that will be forgotten when the snow melts and the bodies are counted. You are 23 years old, though you feel older, centuries older, as if the war has taken not just your youth, but the very concept of youth itself and buried it somewhere you will never find it again. Your name is Alexei, and before this, before the mud and the screaming and the nights when the sky turned red with fire, you were a woodcutter in a village so small it did not even have a name on most maps, just a cluster of wooden houses huddled together against the Siberian wind like frightened animals. You remember the sound of the axe splitting wood, the clean crack of it, the way the grain would separate and fall away in two perfect halves, and you remember thinking that this was honest work, that this was something you could understand. But that was another life, and the man who lived it is gone now, buried beneath the snow alongside everyone else. The silence here is a heavy shroud. It presses down on your chest and makes it hard to breathe, and you realize that you have not heard a human voice in hours, maybe days. Time has become as meaningless as the cold. You are lying in a crater, the earth around you scorched and frozen at the same time, a contradiction that makes no sense but exists anyway because this is war, and war does not care about sense. Your leg is wrong. You know this without looking. You can feel the heat of it even through the cold, the wet warmth spreading through your trousers, and you know what that means, but you do not want to think about it. Instead, you think about your daughter, 3 years old when you left, her small hand waving goodbye from the doorway, and you wonder if she will remember your face or if you will become just another story her mother tells her on winter nights, another ghost among many.
You try to move, and the pain arrives like a guest who has been waiting politely outside, and now that you have acknowledged it, it floods in without reservation, filling every empty space inside you until there is nothing else, no memory, no hope, no tomorrow, just the white-hot certainty that something fundamental has been broken. The crater around you is perhaps 3 meters wide, the edges ragged and dark against the snow, and you understand dimly that this is where the shell landed, the one that screamed through the air like a dying animal before it found the earth and tore it open. You were fortunate, if fortune is the right word for still being alive when everything around you has been transformed into a landscape of ending. The trees that remain standing are not trees anymore, but charred monuments to what they once were, their trunks split and blackened, and you can smell the smoke even now, acrid and bitter, mixing with the copper scent of blood that you know is your own. Time moves strangely here. It stretches and contracts like a muscle in spasm, and you cannot tell if minutes are passing or hours, if the sun has moved across the sky, or if the sky itself has simply given up and frozen in place. Your hands are shaking, not from fear, but from cold, the kind of cold that seeps into the joints and makes the fingers curl inward like the legs of a dead spider, and you try to remember the last time you felt warm, truly warm, not the false warmth of fever, but the honest heat of a fire in winter, your family gathered around it, your wife's hand on your shoulder, her touch light and certain like a promise. That was in another world, a world where woodcutters rose before dawn and walked into the forest with their axes and their dogs, where the work was hard but comprehensible, where a man could measure his day by the cords of wood he split and stacked and know that he had accomplished something real. You remember the rhythm of it, the swing and the impact, the way your muscles learned the motion until it became as natural as breathing. And you remember your father teaching you, his hands over yours on the handle, showing you the angle, the follow-through, and you remember thinking that this was all you would ever need to know, that this simple knowledge would carry you through your life like a boat carries a man across a river. But the war came the way winter comes, inevitable and indifferent, and one day there were men in the village square reading names from a list, and your name was among them, and your wife cried, but did not ask you not to go, because there was no point in asking. The list was the list, and the war was the war, and men did what they were told, because the alternative was unthinkable. You kissed your daughter's forehead, and she asked when you would be back, and you said soon, a lie so obvious and necessary that it tasted like ash in your mouth, and then you walked away and did not look back, because looking back would have unmade you entirely.
You hear something moving through the snow, and your body tenses instinctively, the animal part of you that still clings to survival even when the rational part has already begun to negotiate with death. The sound is careful, deliberate, not the random crashing of artillery or the mechanical grinding of tanks, but footsteps, human footsteps, and you understand that someone is approaching the crater, that the solitude you have been lying in is about to end. Your rifle is somewhere to your left, half buried in the frozen mud, and you reach for it with fingers that no longer obey you properly. The cold has transformed them into clumsy tools, and even if you could grasp the weapon, you are not certain you could lift it, aim it, fire it. The sequence of actions that once seemed so simple now feels impossibly complex. The footsteps stop at the edge of the crater, and you can hear breathing, ragged and heavy like your own. And then a shadow falls across you, blocking what little light filters through the gray sky, and you force your eyes to focus on the figure standing above you. He is wearing a uniform, but it is the wrong uniform. The colors are wrong. The insignia is wrong. Everything about him is wrong, and you realize with a clarity that cuts through the fog of pain that this is the enemy, that the man looking down at you is the same enemy you have been trained to kill without hesitation, without thought, without mercy. He is young, perhaps younger than you. his face pale and drawn beneath a cap dusted with snow, and his eyes meet yours, and there is something in them that you did not expect. Not hatred or triumph or even pity, but a kind of exhausted recognition, as if he is seeing not an enemy, but simply another man who has found himself in an impossible place. The moment stretches between you like a wire pulled taut, and you wait for the bullet, the bayonet, the end that you know must come, because this is war, and war has its own logic and its own conclusions, and mercy is not part of the vocabulary. But instead, he kneels beside you, his movements slow and careful, and he speaks in a language you do not understand, the words soft and almost apologetic, and then his hands are on your leg, examining the wound with a gentleness that seems obscene in this landscape of violence. You want to push him away, to spit in his face, to do something that acknowledges the fact that he is the enemy and you are the enemy, and between enemies there should be only killing. But your body will not respond. It has made its own decisions about what is important, and survival has won out over ideology. He removes his pack and begins pulling out supplies, bandages and scissors and small glass vials, and you watch as if from a great distance as he cuts away your trouser leg, exposing the wound to the freezing air. And you see it finally, the ragged hole where the shrapnel entered, the flesh torn and dark, and the blood that continues to seep out despite the cold.
You feel his hands working on your leg, and the pain becomes something transcendent. It lifts you out of your body and suspends you somewhere above the crater, above the forest, above the war itself. And from this vantage point, everything looks small and meaningless. The armies and the flags and the borders that men die to defend or destroy. He works quickly, but not roughly, his fingers pressing gauze into the wound, wrapping bandages tight enough to slow the bleeding, but not so tight that they cut off circulation entirely. And you understand that he has done this before, that he has knelt beside other broken men in other craters and performed this same ritual of temporary salvation. The wind picks up and drives snow into your face, each flake a tiny needle of ice, and you can feel your body beginning to shut down, the extremities going numb first, the fingers and toes retreating from sensation as the cold advances inward toward the core. He says something else in his language, his voice urgent now, and then he is lifting you, or trying to, his arms under your shoulders, pulling you up and out of the crater. And you want to tell him to stop, to leave you here, because you are too heavy, and he is too tired, and this effort will kill you both. But the words will not come. They are frozen somewhere in your throat, along with everything else. The forest tilts and spins around you as he drags you across the snow, your wounded leg trailing behind like something that no longer belongs to you. And you can see the path you are making, the dark smear of blood against the white, a trail that anyone could follow, that will lead them directly to both of you. He pulls you into the shelter of a fallen tree, its massive trunk offering a windbreak, and he leans you against it and covers you with his own coat, a gesture so unexpected and so contrary to everything you have been taught about the enemy that for a moment you wonder if you are already dead, if this is some fever dream your dying brain has constructed to make the ending easier. But the pain is too real, too insistent, and you know that this is happening, that an enemy medic has decided, for reasons you cannot comprehend, to treat you not as a target, but as a patient, not as a thing to be destroyed, but as a life to be preserved. He builds a small fire using branches he gathers from beneath the snow,
dead wood that is dry enough to catch, and the flames are pitiful and small, but they are flames nonetheless, and you watch them flicker and dance as if they are the most beautiful thing you have ever seen. He boils water in a metal cup and holds it to your lips, and you drink, the warmth spreading through you like a blessing. And he opens a tin of something and feeds you with a spoon, and you eat because your body demands it, even though your mind cannot reconcile what is happening.
You drift in and out of consciousness through the night, and each time you surface, the fire is still burning, and he is still there, sitting across from you with his back against a tree, his rifle across his knees. And you realize that he is keeping watch, that he is protecting you, not just from the cold and the wound, but from the war itself, from the patrols that might pass through, from the reality that would demand he kill you or you kill him. The snow continues to fall, a curtain between this small circle of firelight and the rest of the world, and in the dancing shadows you can see his face more clearly now, the exhaustion carved into it like words into stone, the lines around his eyes that speak of too many nights without sleep, too many decisions that no training could have prepared him for. You think about your daughter again, about the way she used to climb into your lap after dinner and fall asleep with her head against your chest, her breathing slow and steady, and you wonder if this man across from you has a daughter, a son, a wife waiting in some distant city for a letter that may never come. The fire pops, and a small shower of sparks rises into the darkness and disappears, and you understand that what is happening here in this forgotten corner of the forest is something that cannot be explained by the maps and strategies and ideologies that brought you both to this place. It is something older and simpler and more fundamental. It is one human being refusing to let another human being die when he has the power to prevent it. Dawn comes slowly, the sky lightening from black to gray, and with it comes the sound of engines in the distance, trucks or tanks moving along the frozen road. And he stands quickly and stamps out the fire, scattering the embers, erasing the evidence of this small rebellion against the machinery of war. He kneels beside you one last time and checks your bandages, tightening them where they have loosened, and then he speaks again in his language, and though you do not understand the words, you understand the meaning. You can hear it in his tone, the apology and the resignation, the acknowledgement that this reprieve is ending and the war is returning to claim you both. He places his canteen beside you and a packet of bandages, and then he stands and picks up his rifle and walks away without looking back, his footsteps fading into the forest until there is only silence again, the kind of silence that comes after miracles, after the inexplicable intrusion of grace into a world that has forgotten what grace means. You lie there as the light strengthens, and you think about the man who saved you, about the choice he made that defied every rule and expectation, and you understand that you will carry this moment with you for however long you survive, that it will become the measure against which you judge every other human action, every claim of righteousness or necessity or duty. The war will go on. It will grind forward across the frozen earth, consuming men and cities and futures. But here in this place, something different happened, something that the generals and politicians will never write about in their histories, a moment when the enemy stopped being the enemy and became simply another man trying to preserve a fragment of humanity in the howling darkness.
and you know now that this is what survival really means. Not the continuation of breath and heartbeat, but the stubborn insistence that compassion is possible, even when everything argues against it. That mercy can exist even in the architecture of hell. And as you close your eyes against the pale morning light, you whisper a prayer of gratitude to a God you are no longer certain you believe in, for the enemy medic who treated you as his own.